Avonswood Abbey stood atop a lonely hill, its dark spires piercing the moonlit sky like accusing fingers. Once a grand sanctuary for monks, the abbey had long since fallen into disrepair, its halls echoing with the whispers of forgotten prayers and unspoken sins. The townsfolk spoke of the place in hushed tone, claiming it was cursed, haunted by the restless spirits of those who had perished within its cold stone walls. Arthur Jemdock, a scholar of the occult, was no stranger to such stories. Driven by a thirst for knowledge and a desire to uncover the truth behind the legends, he arrived at the abbey one stormy evening, his carriage struggling up the muddy path. He had heard tales of the abbey's dark past, of rituals, sacrifices. He was determined to document its history for his latest book. The heavy wooden doors of the abbey creaked open as Arthur pushed against them, the sound swallowed by the howling wind outside. He stepped into the dimly lit nave, the flickering light from his lantern casting long, eerie shadows on the crumbling walls. The air was thick with the scent of mildew and decay, the silence broken only by the distant rumble of thunder. As Arthur ventured deeper into the abbey, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. The eyes of long-dead monks seemed to follow him from the faded frescoes that adorned the walls, their expressions a mix of sorrow and accusation. He set up camp in what had once been the library, its shelves now empty, save for a few moldy tomes that had miraculously survived the ravages of time. He spent the first few days exploring the abbey, carefully documenting his findings. The more he uncovered, the more he became convinced that the tales of the abbey's dark history were rooted in truth. He found evidence of secret passages and hidden chambers, the remnants of ancient rituals that hinted at a cult that had once thrived within these walls. One night, as Arthur pored over an old manuscript, he heard a faint whispering sound. He looked up, his heart pounding in his chest. The room was empty, the only light coming from the guttering candles on the table. He strained his ears, trying to catch the source of the sound. It seemed to be coming from the direction of the crypt, a place he had yet to explore. Grabbing his lantern, Arthur made his way down the narrow stone steps that led to the crypt. The air grew colder with each step, the darkness pressing in around him like a suffocating shroud. He could hear the whispering more clearly now, a soft, sibilant murmur that seemed to echo off the walls. The crypt was a vast subterranean chamber, its walls lined with the crumbling remains of monks who had been laid to rest centuries ago. Arthur's lantern cast a feeble light, illuminating the moldering coffins and the skeletal remains within. Followed the sound of the whispering, his breath visible in the frigid air. At the far end of the crypt, he found a large stone sarcophagus, its lid slightly ajar. The whispering grew louder as he approached, a chorus of voices blending together in a haunting melody. Arthur hesitated for a moment, his hand trembling as he reached out to push the lid aside. Inside the sarcophagus lay the skeletal remains of a monk, his hand clasped around a weathered, leather-bound book. Arthur carefully removed the book, the whispering ceasing the moment he touched it. The cover was adorned with strange symbols, and the pages were filled with indecipherable script and disturbing illustrations. As he flipped through the pages, Arthur felt a growing sense of unease. The book seemed to pulse with a dark energy, its contents hinting at unspeakable horrors and forbidden knowledge. He realized that this was no ordinary tome, but a grimoire, a book of dark magic and ancient rite. Over the following nights, Arthur became increasingly obsessed with the grimoire. He spent hours poring over its pages, attempting to decipher its cryptic text. The more he read, the more he felt a strange, insidious presence taking hold of him. His dreams were filled with visions of blood and darkness, of shadowy figures chanting in a language he couldn't understand. One night, as Arthur delved deeper into the grimoire's secrets, he was startled by a loud crash. He looked up to see a figure standing in the doorway of the library, silhouetted by the flickering candlelight. It was a monk, his face hidden in the shadows of his hood. "Who are you?" Arthur demanded, his voice trembling. The figure stepped forward, his movements slow and deliberate. As he drew closer, Arthur could see that his face was gaunt and hollow, his eyes burning with an unnatural light. "You should not have come here," the monk said, his voice a low, echoing rasp. "The secrets of Avonswood Abbey are not meant for the living." Arthur tried to respond, but his voice caught in his throat. The monk raised a skeletal hand, pointing directly at the grimoire. That book is a gateway, he continued, a conduit to the dark powers that once ruled this place. You have awakened them, and now they will consume you. Before Arthur could react, the monk vanished, leaving only a cold, empty silence in his wake. Arthur stared at the spot where the figure had stood, his mind reeling. He knew he had to leave the abbey, but he also knew that the knowledge contained within the grimoire was too valuable to abandon. He spent the next few days preparing to leave, his every move shadowed by a growing sense of dread. The whispering returned, louder and more insistent, filling his mind with dark thoughts and unholy desires. He could feel the presence of the spirits growing stronger, their eyes watching his every move. On his final night in the abbey, Arthur decided to perform one last ritual, hoping to gain some final insight into the grimoire's secrets. He set up a makeshift altar in the nave, using the candles and relics he had found during his explorations. As he began to chant the incantations he had painstakingly deciphered, the air grew thick with an oppressive energy. The shadows in the room seemed to come alive, writhing and twisting like living things. Arthur could feel a dark presence drawing closer, its malevolent intent palpable. He continued the ritual, his voice trembling as he recited the ancient words. Suddenly, the candles were extinguished, plunging the nave into darkness. Arthur felt a cold hand grasp his shoulder, and he turned to see the ghostly figure of the monk standing behind him, his eyes burning with an unholy light. You have gone too far, the monk intoned. Now you will pay the price. Before Arthur could react, the monk's hand tightened and he felt a searing pain shoot through his body. The darkness closed in around him, the whispering voices growing louder until they were a deafening roar. He tried to scream, but no sound escaped his lips. When Arthur awoke, he found himself lying on the cold stone floor of the crypt. The grimoire lay open beside him, its pages glowing with a faint otherworldly light. He felt a strange numbness in his limbs, as if his very soul had been drained from his body. He struggled to his feet, his mind foggy and disoriented. The crypt was empty, the whispering voices now silent. Arthur knew he had to leave the abbey before it was too late. But he also knew that the knowledge he had gained came at a terrible cost. As he stumbled up the stairs and out into the stormy night, he felt the eyes of the spirits watching him, their presence a constant, chilling reminder of the dark power he had unleashed. The abbey loomed behind him, its dark spires a testament to the horrors that lay within. Arthur returned to his home, but he was never the same. The grimoire haunted his every waking moment, its dark secrets etched into his mind. He could feel the presence of the spirits growing stronger, their influence seeping into his thoughts and dreams. In the end, Arthur realized that some knowledge was too dangerous to possess. He sealed the grimoire in a lead-lined box and buried it deep in the earth, hoping to contain its dark power. But the whispers never ceased, a constant reminder of the price he had paid for his curiosity. Avonswood Abbey remained a place of darkness and dread, its secrets buried deep within its crumbling walls. And though Arthur had escaped with his life, he knew that the Abbey's dark influence would haunt him until the end of his days. For in the shadows of Avonswood Abbey, the past never truly dies, and the spirits of the damned still linger, waiting for the next unwary soul to awaken their dark power.